that topic.
Yeah, I think we tabled it in essence to say, you know, that it needed and required further discussion. And even just to put one sentence in there to say, you know, we discussed a possible additional section after the Board of Selectmen approved this particular document relative to enforcement. That was what I was trying to say. So if anybody looks at the minutes, they can say, okay, we discussed it.
Okay, so it's a matter of record. Okay. So
I had made some clarifications or changes into the minutes that had to do with their discussion of how holding the lake level at 4 inches, because some of it wasn't quite right. I don't have my email in front of me, so I don't remember how I wanted to change it. But the ripples that went out were right, so maybe it's a moot point.
Well, the ripples, yeah, but I mean, if it's a matter of record of what we discussed in the last meeting,
Yeah,
then the minutes should be changed so that, you know, if we go back a month from now or a year from now or whatever, that we can, you know, clearly show what we discussed. So,
maybe Phyllis has the email I sent.
Phyllis, you're muted. Phyllis?
I like the hand motion.
Yeah.
Sounds like.
Yeah.
Jim, you
Phyllis,
might have to run over there.
Phyllis, I can't hear you.
Phyllis, can you hear us?
Can you nod up and down, Phyllis, if you can hear us? Okay. All right.
Well, this says
If
you're
you
muted,
move-
Phyllis. Hit your unmute and mute again. See if that works.
If you move your cursor down to the lower left,
Yeah.
the button should appear.
There we go.
Hey.
Phil?
All right. Hi, Phyllis.
I don't know, guys. I had you on my phone, then I had you on the computer. Okay, Dan, I do have your information that you sent through on the high water level.
Oh, great. So maybe that's something, if you don't mind reading it, because that's how I think we ought to fix the minutes.
Let's see. Hold on. Let me go back there. Da, 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 da. Where the devil is it? Excuse me. I have a big Great Dane in my face. I'm sorry, guys. Right. Give me a half a second to pull this up, okay?
Okay.
Yep.
And then I didn't know we were going to read that tonight. Okay. Hold on a half a sec. Ugh. Okay. So what you had here, Dan, was it should read with the lake water level at +4 inches over base water level spillway. There is a problem with water overtopping the seawalls at some properties. This is causing problems for the property owners and for the lake as soil can be washed into the lake. Property owners should be aware that the water could reach a level as high as +6 inches over base water level as part of the normal range for the operation of the dam's gate valve. And they should plan the future maintenance of their properties and seawalls accordingly. This can be addressed through an issue of ripples from the CLA. Does that sound right, Dan?
Yeah, I think that's what should be there instead of what was there.
Motion to accept change of minutes.
Do we have a second?
I'll
Second.
second that.
Oh, second, Steve?
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. All in favor? Aye.
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 Any opposed?
Aye.
Okay, all right, so that's,
So we're just saying, we're just,
Henry,
I know
Henry,
it's late. We're just saying,
Henry, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, we're just saying that we should put out notification that that's a possibility.
We
Is
did.
that correct?
I'm going
I took a
to,
ride, I took a
No, I-
ride around the lake just before the meeting
It's fine.
and took a look at all the elevations of the seawalls, and there's a lot of them that the water's close to the top of the seawall. And it's a
Actually,
dead, flat, calm lake.
actually, Phyllis, part of that email was that what we were also deciding at that point was to hold the water level not like get any higher than 4 inches this year. Is that in my
That is
email? too?
correct. Yep,
Correct.
that is correct.
And that's what the ripple said.
Yeah,
Yep.
but I think I wrote that in the,
You said, yeah, that it should not be over 4 inches of the normal high water level
just for this year.
for this year.
Okay.
So is that something that we're going to move on it for next year and then talk about it again next year? Is that the idea?
No, I think the idea was, you might only have read the second half or maybe the first half of my email corrections there, but I think the idea was this year we're not going to get above 4 inches. We're going to make sure everybody knows that in coming years it could go as high as 6, like it should be able to now. And so this coming winter, if you need to do something with your seawall or whatever, you got to start planning that now.
You did, Dan. I'm sorry. Yes, you did.
That's all right. I should have had my own email with me.
Yeah, I'm just flipping through. Yeah, you did.
and since I came in late, I'm abstaining on the motion.
Okay.
Good evening. Sorry to be late.
No worries.
Henry, there's a rumor you had a big party.
A big party? No, I have, my family came in early for a summer vacation because of the fact that they could continue to work remotely while being here.
Enjoy it.
Yeah, and my
That's
grandkids,
hard.
my grandkids work very locally. They're a lot of fun.
Good, good.
And I do have your full comment back. And as you ended, you said, Henry came back in and said that this can be addressed through the issue of the Ripple CLA, like Mary said. But what you had said is, once we reach as high as +6 inches over the base water level as part of the normal range for the operation of the dam's gate valve, and then they should plan future maintenance of their properties and seawalls accordingly. And then it ended up, this can be addressed through ripples. That's exactly what you said.
Perfect.
Okay, so are we still okay with the minutes and accepting it as it was?
I'm good.
Okay,
So I'm sorry, are we changing back or are we accepting the
No.
motion as changed?
Mary,
Eh?
you made the motion to accept as changed, right?
Correct. Whatever
Well,
Dan said. I make the motion, whatever Dan said.
Okay.
Okay.
But there was,
And
before we accept the minutes though, was there an item about enforcement that needed to get added?
Oh, just that future discussion of an enforcement section for the guideline that we hope would be approved by the BOS, but it's not approved.
I would argue that we not put that in the minutes because of the fact that we're not talking about an ordinance. And we can talk about it, but I'd rather not see anything in writing on it.
Okay, why? What's the downside?
Well, because we want to keep the state out, we cannot put a penalty in as they're written now. We'd have to craft an ordinance. And after what we've are going through just to get guidelines through, I don't think it is wise to try to put an ordinance in place. I would prefer to see if we could do something along the lines of a, a bond, or with what we're going to get to, because of the fact we have to deal with inland wetlands, to deal with let the inland wetlands put the penalty on for failing to adhere to the dock regulations, because the Inland Wetlands Commission does have jurisdiction over the lake. We don't want them to wade too far into the lake, figuratively or literally, but we may want to take advantage of their ability to impose penalties.
Inland Wetlands does have an enforcement section. Is that what you're saying? They do.
Yes, well, and they have authority. It's based on state statute. We don't really have authority to put, or the selectmen don't have authority to put anything in terms of a penalty on these guidelines, because they do not have the force of an ordinance. They are just voluntarily complied with, basically. They have stand the test of time. So time and tradition is what stands in back of them more than anything else.
So
Henry, in looking at the minutes from last month, where we said that there was a preliminary discussion for the future on the enforcement and preventative action clause, you're suggesting that that be removed now?
No, I think that's I let that go, but I would rather, we cannot, we cannot have private discussions on it, but I would just as soon have it be downplayed in the minutes when we do have discussions on it, because I think that the focus really, and we'll probably discuss it further tonight, the focus really may be to look to inland wetlands to provide that, and then preserve the quiet guideline capacity of these dock regulations without getting the DEP and others involved in it.
Gotcha. Okay, so we'll leave it that as is. We just leave
So
it there.
leave it out, but Phyllis, did the minutes reflect that we did have a discussion, because John was with us, Valenti,
Right.
to partner with wetlands. So something as simple as that, Henry, and then you can build on it.
All we said in the minutes was a preliminary discussion for the future on an enforcement and preventative action clause. That's all we wrote.
There you go. We should just say somehow we're going to partner with wetlands, because we did have that discussion.
Well, after that, there was a discussion on researching a bond. And then the third one was a discussion on having an LMAC member sit on the board of wetlands. So all those three were there.
Okay, we're good.
We good?
Okay, so do I have a motion to accept the
Can I just ask a question? So so you're saying if someone breaks the ordinance or does something different, we then need to go to the wetlands to have them enforce it?
Well, we need to discuss.
Well, we haven't discussed it yet. That's what we need to discuss. And we can take it up now, or we can take it up under the old business, but.
Yeah, let's get through the meeting minutes and get on to the other items.
Probably a good idea.
Okay, so do I have a motion to accept the meeting minutes as adjusted?
Yes,
Marion,
I'll make a motion to accept as stated.
Okay, second?
I'll second that.
Okay, and we got second. All right, all in favor? Aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, moving on. No guest speakers, no audience of citizens. Any communications for tonight? No?
Mike, did you see those communications that were sent to the town?
We do have communications with respect to the dock regs, and maybe we should just take them up as part of that.
That's what I was thinking. Yeah, I was thinking anything outside of a specific line item. for tonight. Okay. The dam report.
Yep, we're at +2 inches. The water's flowing over like an inch, looks beautiful. 5% the left weep hole, 15% the right. And there's a pile of brush in the spillway. I don't know if the town goes to remove it. It's been there for about a month. And I guess it's all right. It's probably just going to rot away. But that's it. We're at +2. Water temperature is 68 at our dock.
I would recommend we notify George of the pile of brush because it could cause a jam in the tunnel under the road.
Yeah, it looks like it's been clipped. It doesn't look like it's just floated in. Wherever it came from, it may have come from the dam. I don't know. It's definitely snipped, so it's not naturally growing there. And it looks like there was no leaves on it, so it means it was snipped before, the green comes, the last 2-3 weeks.
Well, George should investigate. If it wasn't town activity, he might want to advise the neighbors not to let things fall into there.
Yeah, it might be dangerous to get it out right now as the water's flowing down the overflow. They may want to stop and wait till there's no flow.
Well, yeah, we'll let them call the shot, but let's just report it from our perspective.
Okay.
There's been a number of trees removed from several properties on the lake over the last month. One specifically yesterday.
This stuff in there is not from a tree. It's like
A bush.
almost like a brush that the stuff that grows up the side of trees, kind of
Yeah.
nothing bigger than a half an inch.
I know, because I pulled out a lot of small branches from the tree that was taken right over the lake then. But
Yeah.
so that may be happening, when people are weed whacking and all that stuff.
Yeah.
All right.
That's it.
Okay. Thank you. Anything on water quality? Anything on fishing? I know I've seen lots of fishing.
Yeah. And maybe this is on water quality, but I want to observe that I saw some floating mats in the dam area this past weekend, and I investigated. And they were the mass of oak tassels with maple seeds intermixed. And they were fairly large. And it made me start to think that maybe some of the things that have been seen down there before were created in the same fashion. And these were created because of the fact the wind pattern was creating cyclical motion in these particular areas as the wind bounced off the shore and, found its own way. And so, a la how you can see in the ocean where things are kind of gathered together in a mass, this was a wind-driven experience. And so when we look in the future, if somebody reports a mass that contains blue-green algae in it, this may be an alternative theory to the concept that it just floated up from the bottom. It could be that it's generally dispersed in the water, but because of the wind pattern, it brings it together. And these collections were probably 12 to 15 feet in diameter. So they were not, just little small patches. Because I immediately gravitated to them thinking that they could be something that came up from the bottom based on last year's report. And it was clear when I investigated that they were not.
Okay. Thank you. All right.
From a water quality point of view, Mark, is there any update on siphon pipe? Would that be appropriate, Mike, to ask for water quality?
Sure.
No, I know that Anchor Engineering has put out for quotes on companies to give us clear geo picture of the whole bottom for depths and or specifically in the deep areas, but I haven't heard any back on what that would cost yet. So I'll follow up with Anchor to see where they are on that project.
Can we ask Mark for that to be a definitive report in July?
Sure.
Okay. Access, safety and regulations.
Maybe Mark should talk about what the decisions have been with regard to the beach and how it's going.
I did get a report in from Mark Bolts, and he asked me to put it into the minutes. So do you want me to read what he put down, or do you want to have Mark talk to it right now?
Mark
Either's
Walter.
fine.
Maybe
Yeah.
both. Start with Mark Bolts, and then if we have questions for Mark Walters.
Is that okay with everybody?
Yeah.
Okay.
like it.
So Marine Patrol, Mark sent me this today, and he said to date there are 56 stickers that have been issued, along with 52 gate keys. No major issues. There was a submerged buoy which was reported and is in the process of being taken care of, and a large branch was dragged off in the lake. One boat was denied entry to missing paperwork, returned with paperwork and granted access. Warm weekend days have been busy with boaters, kayakers, and paddleboarders. Only minor issue is due to the pandemic. DMV is behind on new registrations and has been issuing extensions. No denials due to the invasive species to date. And the Marine Patrol website has been updated with the 2020 gate and Marine Patrol hours and schedule. Invasive species informational pamphlet has been posted, town ordinance, and a boater's checklist for the first time launching. And that was from Mark.
And then we
That's
have
it.
not had to shut down the beach. We're monitoring the maximum amount we're allowing at the moment is 55, 35 on the beach and
55?
20 up on the grass. And that seems to be working. We have porta potties, 2 porta potties and exterior hand sanitizing station established. Plus lifeguards are on duty and gate monitors and parking lot monitors. So everything seems to be working. People are ordering their beach passes. The Board of Selectmen actually originally voted, but then after relooking at everything, we put in a $5 discount pretty much across the board, just in case people got denied, they wouldn't be as upset. So we've not gotten any negative feedback since that's happened or positive feedback. It seems to just be working at the moment.
Mark, this is Dave Vanderbilt. I got a question about a friend of mine who lives on the lake, and they're supposed to buy a boat this weekend, and there's, I don't think, any way to get a registration to get it on the lake this weekend. I wonder if they're making any kind of provision for new purchases.
Yeah, I'm sure he'll have to just call me up or Mark Bowles, and we'll work with it.
The state is not making any exceptions. If you buy a new car, you got to wait until you get your license plate.
Yeah, I even in the renewals, on the renewals, I know it takes about 10 days, 10 days to 2 weeks to, after mailing in the renewal registration, we got our renewal back in about 2 weeks, 10 days to 2 weeks is a turnaround time.
Is there a liability to allow a non-registered boat on the lake?
I would imagine there is.
Yeah.
No, it's not an unregistered boat. It's just not registered in the name of the person that's buying it.
Yeah,
So
but that's a new number.
No, it's the same number. It's just the number stays with the boat.
Hey, Bob, you're muted.
Bob,
Bob Powell.
can you,
No, I'm not.
oh, go ahead.
The state is accepting renewal applications. They are not accepting any new boat applications.
You're not coming through.
Bob, your audio isn't coming.
Try a chat.
Where's the microphone, Bob?
It may be the bandwidth.
Oh,
Yeah. Can you hear me now?
it's echoing and then muting.
Delete your picture for the moment and then talk.
Can you hear me now?
No.
Have people turn off, have people mute, please.
Mute. Everybody should mute. If everybody
If
mutes.
you're not speaking, mute. If you're not speaking, please mute.
Hey, you know what? Bob Powell's got two screens up, like he's on twice. One's muted and one's not.
That's why it's echoing. He's got maybe a phone and a computer on.
Right. It's echoing off itself.
He's battling off himself.
Yep. He's got
So he could call in on just phone. We don't need to see the picture.
See me? That working?
that's better.
Okay, the state is accepting renewals for boats, but is not accepting any new applications for registrations. Everything's done by mail, and they're not accepting new applications for boats, for boat registrations.
Okay, thank you.
Well,
The other thing,
they're
Phil, I had
accepting
a
them
question
via
for-
mail.
So you
So does
can't.
that mean if you buy a new boat, you can't register it? Is that what it is?
That's right. That's correct.
Well, I mean, the summer's
I
just
bought a
starting, you know?
new boat.
That's a problem between your friend in the state of Connecticut, not between your friend in the town of Columbia.
Well, I'm not sure if that's fair.
It may not be. Have them take it up with the governor.
I have a question for Phyllis on the report from Mark Volvo.
On
Phyllis,
the- On the report, I couldn't hear you, Bob. On the report for what?
how many keys have been issued?
He asked how many keys have been issued?
52.
52.
That is more than double what has ever been issued in the past. I think it's a problem because those boats are not being inspected. Way too many keys issued. It's circumventing the whole gate issue.
Well, there may be more of us. I never had one in the past, and I have one this year. But I will also report in the same regard. I launched my sailboat on Sunday morning at 7:45, and the gate was open. There were two cars with trailers there. I took license plate pictures. I was going to send them to Mark, and I failed to. But one of them, if not both of them, left the gate open. And we're, so I don't know whether you want to look back at the, video footage for Sunday morning to look at that. But I do think the fishermen are being lax in this, because when I launched my motorboat the previous weekend, somebody had just launched theirs and they were leaving the gate open, so I didn't even have to use my key. I've launched two boats when there was nobody on duty, and neither time did I have to use the key that I got.
I think you're missing the point, though. The point I'm trying to make is there's 52 keys that have been issued. That's more than double the highest number of keys that have ever been issued. That means those 52 people are suspending the possibility of being inspected. It also it increases the possibility of the gate being open. So I think we need to revisit the whole key issue.
Well, yeah, I think we need to look at and see what individuals. Henry has one. We know and trust Henry. I have one, and
Yeah.
we
And
only use ours on Columbia Lake. I mean, our boat.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
think
I
we have
have
to
one,
be careful.
and I also know 2 people that never got them before, but did this year because of the COVID, because they were all worried that the beach might not be open. So I think a part of
There you
that
go.
spike might be because of that.
And what's
I'm
the,
not saying all of it is, but some of them, because that's what they said. We're afraid that the beach won't be open and I won't be able to get my boat in. So they did it this way.
Well, and people are more available now during business hours to go down to the town hall and get a key. Whereas, you know,
Exactly.
Discovered that they lake
Yeah.
now with the key and not be inspected, you know?
I think it shows that it's working, except that people shouldn't leave the gate open. The number is showing that it's working.
The whole point of getting a key is you've signed a statement that says you're going to self-inspect. So I think we do have to respect that. But I do think we need to have closer monitoring of the video screen and clamp down on failure to lock it. Maybe even have random telephone checks of people that are launching the boat to say, we see you're using the key, you're responsible for self-inspecting. Please confirm that you're doing this.
yeah, 'cause
well,
the
but there's
only,
also, go ahead,
the
Dan.
only problem would be if people are using the key to come in early in the morning and then leave early in the morning when no one's going to see them. If a lot of people have them for their own convenience and they're just putting the boat in for the season, they'll eventually get inspected for their life jackets and fire extinguishers. It's really only how many are going to be, the people who are jumping in and out for, a boat that might move from lake to lake.
Should we consider, and this is just food for thought, should we consider that anyone who has a key, once a season, your boat will be inspected? I'm happy. I put mine in. Come on over and inspect it.
Well,
Oh, yeah, that happens.
or that you have to go to the town hall to have it inspected if you're a resident, and that just makes sure that it's the right horsepower.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well,
Okay.
yeah, but it's easy. It's easy enough that we can cross-reference who has the keys and who has boat certificates come middle of the summer. That's easy enough to check.
Yeah, but I
mean,
think what we're getting into changing policy here.
Yeah,
So-
I think we need to investigate it before we get too far down the line.
I think we've got some concerns here. It's time to make observations.
Yeah.
And if, we can leave it as an open item to revisit it next month. But, we've got a lot of other things to tackle here tonight. And I don't know that we're going to be able to change policy on this midstream. So,
Yeah, without changing policy, though, the town can monitor the screen and enforce the
Agreed.
locking of the gate.
agreed. And it's something that we agreed and
Wait a minute.
I think we're in
we can't-
observation mode.
We can't.
Go ahead,
Yeah,
Tim.
we're making assumptions right now. You're saying we can't. I said we're making assumptions right now. We don't know that it's an issue or not.
It is an issue that the gate is being left unlocked and we have a camera that monitors that.
That happens every year. It might happen more because there's more key holders, but every year the gate is open. I closed it myself numerous times last year when there was less people. So it's not that that's a new issue. It's just it might be getting bigger because there's more people with keys. So we do have to look into it.
But there's no reason why it can't be enforced, because they're supposed to close it. Whether it was last year, this year, or next year.
I'm not sure I follow your point. Yeah.
There's no reason not to have the town call people if they see that they've left the gate open and tell them not to do that again, because otherwise they risk having their key taken away. That's what the rules are.
You got to investigate it. That's what I said. Let's investigate it first before we make assumptions. Find out who's doing it. It's easy enough to do.
I
It
concur.
doesn't take a genius to cross-reference it to see if the boat's inspected or to look at the film.
You're here. Just close the gate. Just tell them to close the damn gate.
Exactly.
Mike, you're on mute.
Yeah, Mike, you're muted.
Uh, the people do have a key, still do have a responsibility to get their boat inspected by Lake Patrol,
Absolutely.
So
Maybe the
that's
first
right.
time that they get the key, it should be when they get their boat inspected. The kid hands them the key. They get their
Right.
paperwork filled out. They get approved for a key. You show up
Yeah.
with your boat. Here's your key.
So not, yeah.
No,
Yeah.
because,
And that's something to consider going forward.
no,
Yeah,
we get the
for
key
sure.
from the town hall. You inspect the boat at the lake. You can inspect.
I'm just saying,
the boat
the-
at the-
Somebody gets the
Boat
key
patrol.
issued. It gets issued to the gatekeepers, and they have a box and with an envelope, and your name is on it. Here's your key.
Yeah, you bring your boat to your key is waiting for you at the gate.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, but that defeats the purpose of getting the key. I want to put my boat in where I'm not waiting in
Oh,
line.
just for the
and
first
back.
time. Just for the first time.
Well, this is what we're going to consider and monitor going forward. It isn't impossible to have it inspected at the town hall either, or to arrange for a remote inspection for a $10 fee or whatever, but that's not where we're at tonight.
Right.
Right.
So
So
we're
is
gonna have
it an open item?
Yes, open item. It'll be, key holder, responsibilities, and protocols moving forward.
Okay. Gotcha.
And that the town, we're requesting that the town look at the gate camera to see see if we can figure out who's leaving the gate open.
Okay.
I know one thing, if they're leaving the gate open, they're probably not inspecting their boat, because those are pretty simple things to do.
Right. Exactly.
We kill two birds with one stone.
Right.
All right. Nothing, anything on the watershed management plan?
So,
Okay. Nothing on stormwater culverts. I don't think anything's going on there. No. Dam emergency plan?
No.
No. Okay. Any permits? Any permits? No. Okay. Budget, how are we doing with budget?
That's Carl's area. I know that he wasn't on. I don't know if Jennifer sent it to him or not.
Okay. We'll revisit it next month. I don't think there were any issues.
I'll just check in with Jen, make sure she's sending it.
Yep. Okay. We still have a LMAC position open. Was Paul Ramsey, did anybody reach out to him?
I thought Mark was going to. Were you, Mark?
If I said that, I have not.
Okay. Shall I do it? Why don't I just do it?
Great.
Okay.
All right,
All
so
right.
we can close this issue and see if we can't find somebody else?
Yeah. So the other thing was open for discussion is having an LMAC member to sit on the board of wetlands, or the wetland committee. Do we have anybody who's interested in,
Let's let that be part of the coordinating discussion that we're likely to try to seek with respect to the dock regs.
okay, fair enough.
What night, Walter, what night does that board meet?
I think it's a 2. Wait, I'll look it up.
Yeah, I'm looking too. Hold on.
Columbia. Forge, inland wetlands, minutes. 7 p.m. the first Monday of each month.
First Monday of the month.
7 p.m. the first Monday, yep, of each month.
Okay. So we'll leave that open for now. Oh, boy, someone's got some feedback going.
And they actually have 2 vacancies.
The Wetland Commission does?
Yes.
Okay.
For
Okay,
further discussion, I was willing to volunteer to be a part of the liaison. I attend the wetlands anyways on occasions for other reasons. But we can come back. to it.
I was thinking I would volunteer for that. I just have some conflicts that I don't know how that would be. Because I do a lot of work with inland wetlands, on a personal level.
yep. Okay,
If you go on inland wetlands, you have to like get certified, go to classes or things like that.
I don't know.
I don't know.
I'll
Well,
find
we
out.
can leave it, yeah, we can leave it open for right now and, let's, but that's great. I mean, we've, if we could get someone to liaison between the both, that would be fantastic.
Steve, the only concern I have with you being the liaison is the amount of time you spend in Florida in the winter.
Yeah, that too.
I mean,
We
if
talked-
there's 2 vacancies, there's no reason not to have 2 of us on it.
Right.
Well, unless we can get you to stay up here more
Well, this year
often,
was, I wasn't supposed to be, obviously, the COVID thing. If I'm going to quarantine somewhere, I think it was an easy decision to make.
Right.
I had planned on, my original plan was only to be away for 3 months, and that just didn't work out. But
Yeah.
that's hopefully not going to be that way next year. Jesus.
Okay. Well, and who knows what the the future holds for meetings, that maybe Zoom will maybe always be a part of meetings, moving forward. Even though we're together, maybe some members can still attend via Zoom. So
Yeah.
there might be some flexibility there. Okay. So we have some consideration of public comments and town building department comments on the proposed standard guidelines.
Yep.
So who wants to take the lead on this?
Well, Mary and I were at the selectmen's meeting last night, so we can report on that. I've interacted with Mark and Steve Harrington on it, and to a limited extent with Paula Stahl. I would say that we have 3 comments that can be dealt with from the general public, and I would recommend that they be responded to by written response, because I'm not sure we're going to do anything that they would want us to do, but we can explain why. The ones from Paula Stahl are all good. I think there's a couple that were just highly technical, and she only caught 1 of 100 places that she'd made the change, and I wouldn't make it. But the critical one, which I think is prudent, and we kind of skirted right from the very beginning, is what other permits do you really need if you're working on your dock or doing a repair and so forth. And so I've done some investigation through one of my partners who does work with inland wetlands, and our Columbia inland wetlands regulations indicate that the lake is a watercourse and part of the jurisdiction of the Inland Wetlands Commission. And that's consistent with the state statute under which they operate. I suspect that historically it's kind of been viewed that from mean high water out, it was the selectmen and the dock regs, and from mean high water shoreland, it was inland wetlands, or some other informal understanding that kind of has let things the way they are. But the informal way we've been dealing with it is not in sync with state statute. And when Paula suggested that we change the regs to say that you have to have the dock permit and any other permits that are required is fair and appropriate. But I said to Mark, you know, that's as clear as mud as far as a landowner is concerned, because he or she doesn't know what else they might need. And so I think our regulations are best to spell out exactly what you might need in order to make sure that they're done properly, and at least for our team that works on this, that goes out and does the inspections, can say, well, you know, in addition to this, you're going to need something from John Valenti or whatever. And at the same time, I think it's very prudent not to create overlapping bureaucracies where somebody said, yeah, go ahead, and somebody said no, type of thing. And my way of thinking, if we had gotten this passed, was that I was going to revisit it afterwards and suggest we try to work with inland wetlands so that something along the lines of saying that when you file a dock permit, we give a copy to John Valenti, who's their agent, and he has a chance to look at it, but have the inland wetlands basically pass a resolution or whatever that says that if it's from the mean high water out and they are complying with the structural guidelines that have been adopted by the selectmen, it's okay by us. If they are doing something with the seawall, we do want to know about it because we want to make sure that they've got the proper siltation and whatever in place. And clearly, if they're building a patio by the lake, that's us and not the dock regs. And you know, and I think if we just have some formalization of that kind of concept, and we have John Valenti in the middle of getting an application so that he can say, oh, this looks like it should be going to wetlands too, or not, then we're fine and we can write that right into the regulations. I think that the only thing that they need to go to the building department for, other than inland wetlands, is if they need an electrical permit because they're going to put electricity on their dock. At the present time, the building department has no, you know, inspection rights or structural details. There's no state or federal building code for docks or whatever that need to be monitored. So we don't need to create involvement of the building department beyond the electrical at this point and the inland wetlands. And so I would suggest that we have, you know, liaison talk with inland wetlands and potentially John Valenti on this, and of course Mark, and try to put something together. The selectmen did defer until July. I don't know whether we can put something together in that time frame because inland wetlands doesn't meet until the first Monday in July now. But that, and it may be that we get back to the selectmen and say, we're working on it. We're happy to put, we would like to put what's there in place for this year because it's workable. And then we'll come back and tweak it on this other. But I do think that we need to deal with it, and we can't just have it the way that Paula Stahl has suggested long-term, which just says you need whatever permits you need, because that's not helpful. It is helpful to alert people that they need other permits potentially, but it's not helpful to us to make sure that people are doing the right thing when they're building in the lake.
So are you saying that we're reverting this back to a discussion with LMAC and inland wetlands? Is that how we want to write this up, or how do you want to proceed?
Well, I wouldn't write it up yet, Phyllis. Let's just discuss it, and then when we, come to a resolution, you can put the resolution in the minutes.
Okay.
So Henry, what you're saying is we need to formalize this more than the old, if you're beyond the wall, it's LMAC, and if you're wall or in, it's wetlands.
I think that that's fine but we need to formalize it. The wetlands needs to say, basically, they need to endorse the fact that they're supporting the dock regs as sufficient wetlands control with respect to those kind of activities on the lake bottom with docks and so forth. And again, my partner recommended that in any case, we have a copy of the permit go to Valenti as the agent for the inland wetlands, just so he can make sure that whatever's going on fits within that criteria.
And that's a clear change because Valenti has always said, at least to me, if it's beyond the wall, I don't have anything to do with it. That's LMAC.
Yeah, well, and I understand that that's kind of been the tradition and the approach, but from a legal point of view, it doesn't leave the Inland Wetlands Commission fulfilling their statutory authority.
Got it. Okay.
Okay, and so there's a way to dot the I and cross the T here and make it easier for the landowner to know when it says, instead of saying any building permit you need, would say any electrical permit you need, and any siltation permit you need, or to say that if you're doing something with your seawall, you need something from inland wetlands as well as LMAC, so that it's clear and people don't show up in September saying we want our dock permit or our seawall permit, and then they're told that they need something from inland wetlands, and suddenly they lost the season.
Got it.
So Henry, I got a little question. We got to make sure the DEP doesn't get involved too. If you're talking about out in the lake with the dock, right?
You're correct. The DEP won't get any more involved than it is right now. I think the only reason the state would get involved would be saying that the inland wetlands wasn't doing their job. And so that's what I'm trying to make it clear, that we are doing the job. Our informal guidelines have no state credibility. And we've kind of kept them that way, and it would be great to keep them that way. The state is going to say that inland wetlands are the ones that have credibility, and so I think we want to move in that direction. And similarly to Mary's point, the inland wetlands could say failure to adhere to the dock guidelines is a violation of our inland wetlands authority, and we're going to cite you for it.
It's an enforcement. Yeah.
Yeah. They're the ones that have the enforcement power without need for an ordinance because they've got statutory enforcement rights. So if we look at that as the way of trying to integrate these two concepts, I think we have a potential winning solution without creating more bureaucracy and hopefully providing better information to the landowner.
We're back to killing two birds with one stone.
You're gonna make Valenti the bad guy.
Now, let's not get into killing birds here, all right?
Yeah.
Ah, all right. Yeah, Chuck and Barry.
Yeah.
Oh, God. Henry, I think it's well stated. Now I understand what was being said at the BOS last night and the change because of the statutory issue. At least for an interim, I'm happy to attend and Steve, come with me if you're interested, next July meeting and get hold of not only John Valenti, but I think his name's John, the chairman, and say, from the Board of Selectmen and LMAC, we need to kind of merge and have a discussion. We'd like to present this at the July meeting. We might as well get the ball rolling.
Right, and one of my partners, if Mark authorizes it, would happy to be a resource to that.
That would
But
be helpful.
I do think that's the way to go, and then from that we can craft a few simple sentences to add to our guidelines in place of what's some of the placeholders that are there now about saying you got to get other permits.
Right, which you could do easily, Henry, because it's already in there. It's just then
Right.
adding those one or two sentences.
Yeah, exactly. Giving better detail.
Yep, yep. Well, if
So-
the committee is in agreement,
Yes.
do we need a motion to move forward, Mike?
No, I mean, if you guys want to just at least start the conversation, I don't see your,
Well, for purposes of the minutes, I'll make a motion that we
Okay.
have a subcommittee to
there you go.
meet with inland wetlands and explore better coordination between our dock and structure regulations and the regulations of and statutory authority of the Inland Wetlands Commission, and that Mary Roykel and Steve Harrington serve as that subcommittee.
Okay, so.
I'll meet you at the
any-
Moose.
That's
Is
fine. Perfect.
Is there, do we have a second for the motion?
I'll second that.
Okay, do we have any discussion?
I mean at the Moose, Mike.
I want that in the motion.
I want that in that motion, damn it. I like that. Advertisement there.
And then we're charging the town for our meal.
I'll tell you what, I'll donate the first one.
There you go. So do we have
And get a
any
lobster
further,
roll for Muffy.
do we have any discussion that is not lobster roll related? Okay, with that said, all in favor?
Aye.
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 And any opposed? I think I heard the Moose opposed, but that's all right. We'll count his vote.
I'd like to make a second motion.
Okay,
Okay, on the basis that it's unlikely we're going to be able to pull this tightly together by the July selectmen meeting, that we recommend to the selectmen that they proceed to endorse what was before them yesterday with, with one tweak that I want to make to Paula's suggestion. She had put 75 numerically in parens and written it out 75, which is a very technical, legal way of doing it, nothing wrong with it, but they're numbers that appear in 60 or 70 places in the document, and she only did it once. And so I would prefer to just leave it the way it was without doing that. But I would suggest we go ahead and wherever she said, talks about needing something from the building department, let's go ahead and put it in there for now. That'll get us at least into the beginning of this season with the proper new application and everything else so that we can proceed. And hopefully, you know, we can put something in place in August or September that it puts us in great position as we enter into the actual performance of permits, but not end up stalling the potential of permits. Because as you remember, right now there is a moratorium against boat lifts that the selectmen voted. And so if we put this at least in, people could be putting boat lifts in again this fall.
Second, whatever motion we come up with, we need to get these guidelines.
Yeah.
done.
So I would repeat, so to shorten it again, I would say the motion would be to recommend that the selectmen adopt the present version of the drafts on an interim basis.
So moved.
Second,
So Henry, yesterday's meeting, the selectmen's meeting, they made some changes. So none of us have written or seen a written copy of that. So we have to see
No.
that, right?
They made no changes. The only changes were Paula Stahl from the building department, and those were circulated to Mike. They didn't get out in time. We can certainly circulate them after the meeting, but the only thing that Paula did that had any substance was inserting the need to get something, a permit from the building department if one was required. So I think they were generally harmless. The three citizens that wanted to do something more substantive, I think we can take those up after we deal with this resolution, because my recommendation is we tell them, we answer their issues, but we say we're making no change.
All right. Well, what was that one about they talked about right-of-ways? Was that
All right.
something that needed to be changed?
No, I would be recommending we not change that. The selectmen and Mark has recommended a change, and we would pick this up as part of what we would do with inland wetlands. But the concept is, right now, we say that right-of-way people have no particular rights, or we also say in another place that right-of-way owners and right-of-way users have to join in any application that might affect a right-of-way. And all of that is in there solely because of the fact that right-of-ways are governed by deeds and recorded documents on the land records. And it's not our job as LMAC or the selectmen's job as selectmen to arbitrate between the person who's using a right-of-way and the person who owns the land underneath it. If they can't work it out amongst themselves, they go to a Connecticut court. And so what we're saying is, just because you have a right-of-way doesn't give you a right to have a dock or a boat or whatever else. What gives you the right to have a dock or a boat, potentially, is if the right-of-way covers 50 feet and if your deed says you have a right to a dock. So Mark has suggested that we add language to the regulation that kind of covers our butt a little bit more by saying, that's what I said, it's not that you have no rights, it's just that your rights are defined by the deed that you got when you bought your house and not by these regulations. So go review your deed, and if you want to come and do something, come and talk to us but you have to have everybody on board with what you're doing, because we're not going to be the judge and jury on what your deeded rights are.
That makes
Yeah.
sense.
Is that, so that's not written into it right now, though? That's something that would be.
Well, it
They're
is.
not making a change in that, right?
We're not making a change. All that Mark Walter was suggesting, which I think is good, is adding explanation as to why we're doing it. So it makes us not look like the bad guy, because right now, the way it's worded, it makes us look like the bad guy. We're telling all people who have rights to use the right of way, you have no rights, but basically what we're saying is, you don't have any rights from these guidelines. If you got any rights at all, they're in your deed. And that's what we're going to be more clear about.
Here.
Okay, because there's two sides of that. Is the owner of the right of way and the user who has use of the right of way. There's two people involved in that,
Exactly. And that's what we're talking about. And that's why our regulations say it takes both in an application to even consider doing something on the right of way, because the landowner may want to do something on that right of way if that right of way is part of his 50 feet. Or if he or she wants to use 15 feet of that right of way as the buffer between the dock and their boundary line, that's where you got to say you got to have everybody involved. And that's what our regulations say, but we don't give a reason for it. And so it's advisable to help people understand that. And so
One quick sentence or two sentences, Henry, and that explanation takes it to where it should be.
Exactly. But I'm proposing we do that at the same time we do the inland wetland stuff, just so that we get something done in July.
Understood. I agree.
So,
What in the past has happened, I mean, I own a right of way and we have a dock, and we got a permit for a dock, and it's the owner themselves has the permit. And there's a few people that have use of the right of way, but they don't have use of the dock.
Well, Dave, your dock saga, it writes many chapters in LMAX history before my time. So I'm not sure that I want to wade in alongside your dock on that issue. But I would just say there's no change. There's going to be no change. Okay.
Okay.
I'm
out of it.
Yeah, but
I'm out.
Okay.
We still have
All
a
right.
motion out there.
Yeah. So we had discussion. We had a motion. We had a second, and we had discussion. So all in
Call the
favor of
vote.
the motion? What's that? All in
All.
favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I need to know who's second.
Aye.
I did, Phyllis.
Yeah.
I
Mary
the
second.
motion.
Okay.
All right. Now there are three things. All right. I don't have time to respond to these because I'm trying to enjoy my family at the same time. I'm trying to deal with a few professional matters that I'm trying to clear up at my office. So I would appreciate if somebody else would, but one was Bruce Harper, and he raised the issue that if we're going to let the water go higher, we ought to raise the height of seawalls. And I pointed out to Mark Walter that we presently have in the regs that the seawalls can be 30 inches above where it goes over the spillway. And so even if we let it go up to 6 inches over the spillway, there's still 2 feet of clearance. And I know at my father's property, we've got that 2 feet of clearance, and if we lose the 6 inches, we still got 18 inches of clearance. And other than in one hurricane in 1954 in my lifetime, we've never topped the wall. So I think our regulations are fine. We did turn down somebody 2 years ago that wanted to go to 36 inches over on the basis that starts to become a sightliness issue.
Plus the regulations have been there for how long, and we really haven't had that many problems with it.
Right. Right. So, but
Go ahead.
yeah, I'm
Go
sorry.
ahead, I'm sorry.
But so the response is that our current regulations cover this concern to Mr. Hopper.
Yeah, we feel that they do, and point out the regulation that says it can be, you can do it up to 30 inches over mean water, which is 6 inches, still gives you 2 feet. And that we're unaware of anybody that's built to the height of 30 inches yet. There may just be a few.
I did.
Okay.
So if someone drafts this, Henry, can you review it to bless it?
Sure, I'd be happy to do that.
Okay. I vote.
And then
Actually,
the second one,
Well, wait a
Actually,
minute,
Henry,
Whoop.
just real quick, does it say in the guidelines, does it give a clue to somebody that they ought to make sure their seawall is at least 6 inches above mean high water, or they have to kind of intuit?
no, that there is not anything in there right now. And maybe we catch that the next time around when we speak it for inland wetlands, but definitely the Ripples needs to do that. And I would say that our group, our subcommittee reviews apps. Anybody who submits something for seawall should be told that as soon as the app comes in.
Yep.
It's a good idea.
Okay. I did not know that. And the person next to me just rebuilt. And Jimmy Blair explained to me how he did it X number of inches above the base. And I had no clue what he was talking about. So there's no
Well,
real reg there yet.
On some of those properties, the grade is just so close to the mean high water mark, it would look, the seawall would be sticking out up over the pitch of the ground.
Yeah, it would create a wall at the lake thing, so that's their decision, but they can also go to inland wetlands and get a permit to backfill.
Right.
Oh. Uh-huh.
I think the smart thing is just to note it to them when the permit comes through.
Right, exactly.
That makes perfect sense. You
Yeah.
know, notify them, let them know the facts, and they can make the decision.
Okay, the next one dealt with the right-of-way issue and the number of boats or docks that could be on it. And I think that the simple answer to that person is that we're not making any change with respect to right-of-ways, because right-of-ways are governed by deeds. The deed of the landowner and the deed of the person that has the right to use the right of way, and they need to work issues out amongst themselves and can access us after they have.
Got it.
And the third one, which came out, which Mark forwarded on just this afternoon, deals with someone who is talking about basically the boat lifts. And the bottom line comes down to the fact that they were saying that a dual lift for a personal watercraft isn't any bigger than a lift for a 16 or 18-foot boat. So why do we say that you can only have one watercraft lift? Because I think they're arguing that they should be able to have two watercraft lifts for personal watercraft, because they're no bigger than one for a boat. And we spent a lot of time on that, and we looked at a number of issues, and we looked at the width of double things and so forth. And, I don't know how best to respond to it other than to potentially say LMAC appreciated his comments. We spent a lot of time looking at that particular issue, and we feel that
This is best for the.
the decisions that were made and drafted are the best practices for the lake, and let it go at that.
Got it. Henry,
Actually, I've got
is that third one, I'm just reading this, and I think Jennifer sent these three. Is that the one where he wanted it grandfathered
Correct.
for 15?
That's part 2 of his thing.
Yeah, the part 2, yes, we have to explain the grandfathering. And the
Actually, can
fact
I go
is,
back to part 1? Can I go back to
Sure.
part 1 for a
Yeah,
minute?
go to part 1, and then we'll go to 2.
I'm just picturing something here. If you had a lift, just one lift, but the jet skis went in one behind the other,
Yeah,
is
double
that
cradle
something that
lift.
would be allowed?
Oh,
It should be.
Because it
Yeah,
would be
that's
no wider or longer than a boat. And we don't have to decide that right now. The point is, these are still guidelines and they're still subject to request of something like that.
Right. That's a good point. There are exceptions made, you know, on all these guidelines.
yeah, so we could say in his letter, these are guidelines. We've decided to remain with the guidelines after giving things, but if someone were to come in with an application that talked about loading one right behind the other, we would be willing to revisit the issue. At that point, it just becomes a safety issue more than anything else, I would say.
Henry, I wouldn't mention, I don't think we should mention about putting them behind each other, but we certainly can say that, you know, we look at every application on an individual basis. But I wouldn't mention how we might look at it differently.
Okay.
yeah, if you give that example, everybody's going to start doing it.
Exactly. We can give the example.
Bob's trying to say something.
This person already submitted an application for what he's proposing last year, and we rejected it.
Right. But that was
Yeah,
started
side by
this.
side.
It's them again?
Yeah, it's that little funky house down on 87, the Sodergrens.
Right.
Okay.
Well, and it was side by side, but I would also say the grandfathering doesn't give you rights to piggyback on the existing regulations. You live with what the grandfathering gives you a waiver of certain things, but it doesn't give you the right to build on top of that. So if you're grandfathering and you got a grandfathered dock, if you want to add something to it, it has to fit within the regulations or you don't get it.
Right.
Yep.
Right.
Are they using a grandfather clause before they applied for it, before there was something that it wasn't allowed? Is that what you're talking about?
No.
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 Bob Powell, didn't they want to put one jet ski on one side of the dock and one on the other? And then it was too close to the property line?
No, they wanted to put 2 together.
Two on,
They wanted two. They
Yeah, but
wanted
I'm
2
talking
together.
when they
We
first
suggested.
When they first came,
Originally-
we talked about this thing a couple of times.
Right. They initially wanted to put 2 together and have it on the neighbor's side of the
Oh,
dock.
that's what it was. Yeah, yeah. It was too
And
close.
that was going to be too tight. They may be able to put 1 on the neighbor's side of the dock. They could also easily put 1 on their side of the dock, but they're saying, no, that crowds our swimming area.
Yeah,
right.
But, that's their issue. And we determined that, 2 wide was too wide,
Right, that's right, yeah. I know they got a funky property down there with crazy line of sights and everything. But, I mean, that's, like you say, it's their problem.
Well, I thought they solved their problem nicely. They had 1 on their side and 1 on the end of the dock. Every time I go by, that's what I see. That's
Yeah,
nice.
well,
right, they just didn't
yeah,
want
I
it
think
there.
they just want to add lifts to that now, and that they can't. They resolved the problem. You can tie the boats up the ones up any way you want. It's just a matter of lifting them. That's the issue.
Well, jet skis aren't really designed to stay in the water. They have a packing around their shaft and they sink.
Right.
They're not supposed to sit in the water for days on it.
Thank you.
Agreed.
Speaking of sinking, I heard a boat sank in the lake. Is that
Mine's
true?
been there since 2008.
Is there truth to that?
Mine's been in the water since 2008, all summer.
Oh, I'm
long.
not saying that they all like that, Jim.
Yeah.
They don't recommend that you leave them in the water. That's all
Yeah,
I'm
I
saying.
know, there are.
I don't care what they do. I'm just saying.
Yeah.
Okay, so are we clear on the responses? Mary, were you gonna make those responses and run them by
I will make a draft
a draft and run them
happily
by
run them
Henry?
by whoever wants to see them. And then you can edit to your heart's content, but it's easier sometimes to make the draft than people edit.
Yep.
Yeah, well, I think that Mike should sign them as chair.
Yep.
Yeah.
So if you could make the drafts and send them to Henry and Henry, if you could take a look, and then I'll take it from there.
Yeah.
Very good.
And Mary, if they're still pissed, put a little writing on the bottom that it's John Valenti's fault.
John, I love it.
Oh, I'm so glad you're on the integration committee.
Oh, boy.
Oh, Steve,
Peace
you're
and
gonna
love,
do
brother. Peace and love.
So Mary has the task of responding to all three.
Well, yes, yeah.
that. Henry,
Draft.
the only thing, once we get this tightened down and Mike makes the appropriate responses, do you want ripples to go out about this? There was a mention of.
Well, yeah, if you think there are worthy of ripples to have those subjects, yeah, that would be fine.
All right. Okay. Maybe one of three. I don't know if everyone has to.
Well, the seawall one probably is
Yeah.
a good one,
Exactly.
and maybe the right-of-way one.
Oh yeah, because that I can tell you
That
that happened. We
That
had
might help
someone-
people's just staying away from us in the first place.
Yes, that's
You know,
okay.
if they read that, that's probably a good one to put in there.
We had a right-of-way issue up the street about 8 months ago, across from the lake, purchased new home with a right-of-way on the lake on a John and Dara Stevens property, actually. And they wanted to know, or a question came up from the realtor, could we put a dock in? They went back and looked at deeds and got legal counsel, and no, in the town or us had nothing to do with it. So I think that is just a precedent that we need to continue.
Good story to tell. Maybe they won't even bring that to our attention.
Yeah.
All right. So are we good with this subject as a whole? Both. Okay.
I think for now, I think we dealt with all the issues.
Okay.
Yep.
The shoreline erosion. What's going on Erdoney Road?
Yeah, Valenti has revisited it and made suggestions to our neighbors to my right, the Botticellos, and the Botticellos are supposedly following up. They've done nothing yet, but I was able during a rainstorm to take a picture and a video, which I showed last month to everyone on this committee, that obviously made him rethink that they probably didn't put the right berm in, or swale, or whatever you call it. Bob Powell is my expert architect engineer on this. So according to Valenti, it's going to be redone, and they're going to dig deeper, and he's going to somehow reposition it. But I've seen no work done to date.
I went by
John,
there today. It looks
say that
exactly the
Send
same.
me a copy of
I'm sorry, Bob. You came in and out.
the plan. John Valente said that he'd send me a copy of the revised plans before the construction started.
You still broke up, Bob.
John Valente said that he was going to send a revised construction plan.
Okay, great.
Okay. All right. And the last item we have here is impact of COVID-19 on summer events, parades, town beach, swim lessons, inspections, CLA annual meeting. I don't know, Mark, Mary, do you want to cover this?
Yeah, so swim lessons are still scheduled. Parents will be involved. The instructors won't be touching the children. The parents will. The softball camp just got canceled.
Yeah.
due to insurance liability. No one's stepping up to the plate as to what the liabilities are for having summer camp events. So a lot of this is still in hold. Obviously, the 4th of July parade is canceled. And we're just hoping a vaccine gets figured out real quickly, or incredible simple testing, so that we can get back to some sort of normal.
From a CLA perspective, and Mark, I don't know if you have an answer to this, and I'm sorry I didn't check. Sharon Ladd is filled out an application for a boat parade, which we believe is legitimate and, health and safety wise, et cetera. And Steve Everett has to sign that before it goes for us to get the route approved. And if approved, we intend to run a 4th of July CLA boat parade. I have not heard from Sharon that Steve has signed or not signed. And
I'm
bless.
sure he'll sign it. I don't think that's a problem.
Bless you.
yeah, I don't think it should
Thank
be
you.
an issue. So,
There's no problem with that getting signed.
yeah.
Should have wore a mask.
I just got my wife. Sorry.
Duck, everybody.
Under your elbow, remember, elbow.
I had the carpet.
Mary, you have to
Mary.
Mary, do you have to come up with a theme for the CLA boat parade?
I guess we do, Phyllis. What do you suggest?
What do you want
Great
to do?
things.
What do you want to put Chuck and Berry up there this year because COVID's had it?
Hey,
About
Mary,
large dogs.
is
What?
the decision on the route clockwise or counterclockwise? Is that what they're wondering?
Yeah, that's it. For us to be able to run the damn thing, every year DP has to tell us to go which direction.
Which way?
Toss a coin.
I'm glad we're ending
this is
with
a tough
such
decision.
important issues. These are important.
That is critical. You don't have the flag hitting you in the head.
Yeah. Every year she comes to me and she says, I got to sign this. And I go, sign what? Which way we go?
Yeah.
That's funny.
Phyllis, you must have done this.
Oh, yeah, year after year.
Oh.
All right. Is there anything else that we need to cover tonight?
Oh, God, we've got through a lot.
Yeah.
There is a lot.
All right. With that,
I'll
I'll
make
take
a motion.
Yeah.
I wanted to keep you to it.
Yeah. Someone has to second it.
Froze, Mike.
Second.
All right. All in favor?
All right.
Aye.
All
Good
right,
night, everybody.
Guys,
Have a
good
good
night.
Good night.
All right. Good night, everybody.
all.
Good night,
Thanks for
all.
everything.
Take care.
Thank you for everything.